What's up gamers, Lecture here at the Diablo 4 Paragon guide on the most popular sorcerer build, Ice Shards. This is my third update to the Paragon setup since D4 released. Making updates to the guide isn't necessarily a bad thing, as it means I've been constantly testing and making tweaks to improve the setup. I'll be going over all the Paragon boards and my reasoning behind each decision, so let's get started. My guides on Icy Veins has a list of all the glyphs and boards used for each build. Looking at this overview, you can immediately see a glaring issue when it comes to sorcerer legendary nodes. Most of these legendary nodes are not even used because they lack good bonuses. The only somewhat useful legendary node is Frigid Fate for the lucky hit chance, but it's still not as good as the separate damage multiplier that other classes receive. Therefore, the Paragon strategy revolves around skipping most legendary nodes and picking boards based off of rare nodes and glyph sockets. It's important to consider which boards have good glyph sockets with the stats required in radius range. For example, you can see the top 5 glyphs require dexterity for their bonus requirements. These are selected as the best glyphs because they have separate damage multipliers in their additional bonuses. Imbiber doesn't have a separate damage multiplier, but it can still stack some additive damage as well as some potion healing. So let's take a look at this in game. The first rare node is Elementalist for the non-physical damage and max life, which is slightly better than Resilience with the all-res. This rare node can still be worth grabbing for the maximum life alone. I think a lot of players are focusing too much on only grabbing damage and not realizing how good maximum life is. If you're tired of getting one shot, consider grabbing some % maximum life in Paragon, as well as some static life increases on gear. I'll come back for this later because it only requires 2 filler nodes before you get to the 3 max life nodes. The first glyph socket is going to be Control for the 20% separate damage multiplier. If Control glyph works the same as Control aspect, that 20% can be applied twice if an enemy is both stunned and frozen. But I've heard reports that this may not be applying correctly. Elemental balance and all the nodes around it are picked up for the non-physical damage and dexterity needed for a Control glyph. Erudite can be skipped because resistances aren't providing much damage reduction. Blizzard is aware and they're revamping resistances for Season 2, but until then we're going to skip all resistance nodes in the Paragon. Moving on up to the first board attachment gate, we have Frigid Fate. The vulnerable damage on Oppressive and Weakness make these two the most important rare nodes in the entire setup. Weakness also gets a buff in its effect from using the Tactician glyph here, giving it 125% bonus. The reason why I moved Frigid Fate to the second board position is because these bonus requirements go up as you attach them later on. Trying to meet more than 250 willpower requirement is hard to do, and this is the most important rare node bonus effect. We continue on to the right, but keep in mind that the cold resistance nodes here are just being passed through. The potion healing on restorative is not important, but I think it's worth stopping for the max life nodes. The final setup would path up here for lucky hit chance from Frigid Fate and advantage. Although you can consider skipping these nodes for now to focus on more damage. Attached on the right is Elemental Summoner, which we don't use for the legendary node, but instead the glyph socket with surrounding dex nodes for Flamefeeder. The Conjuration skill damage on Conjurer is useless, but we path through for the dexterity. This board also has 2 very good rare nodes with Reservoir giving maximum mana and max life, and Swift Conjurer giving an attack speed. Again, the Conjuration skill damage here is useless, but the dexterity bonus for attack speed is easy to reach. Dexterity is the second most important stat next to intelligence for the crit strike chance and dodge chance, so we can prioritize it while we're pathing. This board is in the 3rd position so we can meet the bonus requirement. In addition, the bonus max mana is not bad to have as well, but requires a bit more willpower. We're not stacking a lot of willpower because it doesn't give as much benefit as the other 3 stats. But if you really wanted this bonus and you're close to getting it, you could switch around your pathing a bit. For example, you can pick up this willpower node instead of the dex node here. Our 4th board is Burning Instinct, used briefly just for the glyph socket. The 49 dexterity and radius range is really good for the destruction glyph here for all that critical strike damage. There's also rare nodes that give damage to burning enemies and damage reduction from enemies that are burning. The dexterity bonus on Smoldering Embers should still be obtainable, even though the requirements are starting to get pretty high. Now the closest gate on this board is on the right side, but it takes 6 points to fill. Instead we can go back to Frigid Fate and fill out 5 points here. Now this 5th board can change depending on what version of Ice Shards you're using. I'll use this planner to show you what the default version of the build uses. Ceaseless Conduit is attached as the 5th board for the 49 dex that is within radius range of this glyph socket. The dexterity helps us get more vulnerable damage from the exploit glyph. The crackling energy node is just to pass through so we get more dexterity. We quickly move on to a 6th board here for searing heat. Imbiber still provides a decent damage increase as well as potion healing, but this board is selected for the crit damage nodes in and around combustion for a total of 30%. Remember, crit strike damage and vulnerable damage are separate scalars, and they're worth more than other additive bonuses, such as damage while healthy or damage to burning targets. Now the other variant to Ice Shards is Telestomp, which you can use once you have Raiment of the Infinite. The reading guide has this variant included at the bottom, which is playable once you get this unique chest piece that stuns when you use Teleport. The Teleport stun on Raiment of the Infinite allows us to utilize Static Surge as our 5th board, and we can get 10 mana restored for each enemy that is stunned when we Telestomp on top of them. Exploit is used in this socket, although we lose 5 dex and radius range from the previous board, Ceaseless Conduit. We have to drop our 6th board, Searing Heat, entirely, so we lose the 30% crit strike damage, but we do pick up some other rare nodes in the area. We still have some useful rare nodes around here with damage to stunned, maximum mana, damage to elites, and maximum life. Now that we have a stun on Teleport, we can move away from being reliant on Ice Nova to freeze. The 2nd Paragon setup for Telestomp is made to speed farm Nightmare dungeons faster, but if you still want maximum damage, you can still stick to the first setup that I provided. That's all I have for this video. Hopefully this Paragon setup doesn't need another change until maybe Season 1 when Blizzard releases a bigger update. Until then, peace out and happy slaying.